Is the Third World War looming? It's no news that the United States and Russia have a damaged relationship due to the present Ukrainian-Russian conflict that has been ongoing for a while, and maybe even a lot more. However, this is an entirely different situation, and it calls for alarm. Russia is allegedly embarked on a movement that has unsettled the United States, and this nation plans to do something about it. What has Russia done to be on the United States' radar? How has the United States responded to this recent development? Join us as we discuss the situation surrounding the arrival of Russian warships on the Florida coast, a movement that has shocked the United States. Russia has deployed 3 of its most powerful warships in a nuclear-powered submarine to Cuba. This movement has gotten the attention of the United States, and it is beginning to smell like a war is just around the corner. The major question remains: what are the Russian ships really doing in foreign waters? A naval exercise is the simple answer. The Caribbean will soon witness an extraordinary display of Russian naval power, as 3 warships and a nuclear-powered submarine have made their way to Cuba for joint naval exercises. Set to run from Wednesday through Monday, these drills involve 2 vessels that are capable of carrying nuclear-capable long-range missiles. However, Havana assures the world that none of the ships carry nuclear weapons, and Washington has downplayed any immediate threat to the United States. This simply means there's absolutely nothing to worry about. However, the show of force in the inclusion of nuclear weapons would definitely evoke memories of the tense 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. But experts have argued that Russia's current maneuvers are more about sending a geopolitical signal than provoking conflict. The exercises are simply a strategic move, demonstrating Russia's ambition to assert its influence on a global stage, far beyond its traditional spheres of control. While Havana and Moscow's relationship is not as strong as it was during the Cold War, the 2 nations maintain a friendly alliance, even amid allegations of Cuban nationals being trafficked to support Russia's war efforts. Both countries strongly oppose the sanctions imposed on each other and criticize NATO's expansion. Following Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine, Cuba supported Russia's right to self-defense against NATO, though it stopped short of endorsing the invasion itself. Emmanuel Pietrobon, an analyst with expertise in Latin America in the post-Soviet space, remarked to the Moscow Times that Cuba is Russia's most important partner in the Western Hemisphere from a purely geopolitical and geostrategic point of view. The island's proximity to the U.S. provides Russia with a strategic point for electronic warfare and intelligence gathering, particularly against American naval operations and command centers. For Cuba, Russia is an important ally in maintaining domestic and economic stability, especially given the island's isolation. This partnership was emphasized in 2014, when Moscow pardoned 90% of Cuba's $35.2 billion debt to the Soviet Union, highlighting the economic support that Russia provides to its Caribbean ally. Cuba hosted Russian naval exercises, an event held annually from 2013 to 2020, are considered routine by Washington, even amidst the current geopolitical tensions. Despite Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine and President Vladimir Putin's recent threats to arm nations with weapons targeting Kyiv's Western allies, experts suggest the maneuver's underlying significance remains unchanged. According to Emmanuel Pietrobon, an analyst specializing in Latin America and the post-Soviet space, the meaning of this naval presence is essentially no different from the past. Russia wants to show that its navy is able to cross the oceans and reach Florida's coasts. If anything, the current geopolitical tensions may lead Washington to scrutinize the capabilities of Russia's naval vessels more closely, looking beyond the symbolic nature of these drills. Vladimir Ruvinsky, an associate professor of politics at ICESI University, noted that this attention would be driven by the potential for these vessels to demonstrate advanced capabilities. On the other hand, both Pietrobon and Ruvinsky believe that Russia is leveraging these exercises to reinforce its relations with Cuba and other regional allies like Venezuela, thereby solidifying its presence and influence in the Western Hemisphere. The arrival of the Kazan nuclear-powered submarine in Cuba has sparked significant attention. While it isn't armed with nuclear weapons, the Kazan's ability to launch Caliber cruise missiles, which boast a range of up to 2,500 kilometers and can be fitted with nuclear warheads, is enough to cause a stir. Accompanying the Kazan is the formidable frigate Admiral Gorshkov, equipped with hypersonic Circon missiles that the Kremlin claims are nuclear capable. This show of force is further supported by the academic Pashin refueling tanker and the Nikolai Chakir tugboat, ensuring sustained operations in the region. These formidable naval assets have laid emphasis on Russia's intention to flex its maritime strength and capabilities near American shores, signaling a potent reminder of its global reach and strategic capabilities. This move not only demonstrates Russia's military strength, but also seeks to bolster its alliances with Cuba and other regional partners, reinforcing its geopolitical influence in the Western Hemisphere. However, despite the assurance of peace, the U.S. is gearing up to keep a close eye on Russia's maneuvers in the Caribbean Sea. The Kazan submarine will be tailed by 2 destroyers and 2 sonar-equipped vessels, while a U.S. Coast Guard cutter and another destroyer will shadow the rest of the Russian flotilla. It is important to note that all 4 Russian vessels hail from the Northern Fleet, based in Severomorsk, a distance of 8,500 kilometers from Cuba. During their transatlantic journey, they conducted simulated exercises, practicing long-range missile strikes. Katarzyna Zisk, a professor at the Norwegian Institute for Defense Studies, explained to the Moscow Times that deploying Northern Fleet assets was a sensible choice. The Northern Fleet is the strongest part of the Russian Navy, where some of the most capable warships are deployed. Recent Russian naval exercises have emphasized the ability to move warships across distant theaters, from the Arctic to the Pacific, Baltic, and Black Sea. This bold deployment serves a dual purpose. Domestically, it acts as powerful propaganda, showcasing Russia's global reach and reminding citizens that their navy remains a formidable force, undeterred by the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. According to the United States Department, these drills are just a precursor. Russia plans to conduct additional Air Force and naval exercises in the Caribbean throughout the summer, culminating in a major global naval exercise in the fall. This series of activities has established Russia's intent to project power and influence far beyond its traditional borders, right into America's backyard. On Tuesday, open-source intelligence analysts reported sightings of the CG Stone Coast Guard vessel, the destroyers USS Truxtun and USS Donald Cook, and the Royal Canadian Navy frigate HMCS Ville de Quebec traveling south along the Florida coast. These vessels appear to be tailing the Russian fleet bound for Cuba. In the skies above, at least 1 U.S. Navy P-8A Poseidon and a Canadian CP-140 Aurora were spotted conducting surveillance, adding an aerial layer to this high-stakes maritime shadowing. The Boeing P-8 Poseidon is an advanced American maritime patrol and reconnaissance aircraft, crafted by Boeing Defense, Space, and Security, and based on the civilian Boeing 737-800. It was designed specifically for the United States Navy, and it combines advanced technology with proven reliability to perform a range of critical missions. It is a powerhouse in the skies, excelling in anti-submarine warfare, anti-surface warfare, and intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance missions. Armed with torpedoes, Harpoon anti-ship missiles, and a variety of other weapons, this versatile aircraft can drop and monitor sonobuoys to track submarines. It also seamlessly integrates with other assets, including the Northrop Grumman MQ-4C Triton maritime surveillance UAV, making it a formidable force in modern naval operations. This aircraft has undergone significant modifications for its military role. These changes make the PA capable of operating at lower altitudes and performing more aggressive maneuvers than a standard commercial aircraft, while still fitting within the existing assembly process. To handle the demands of its missions, Spirit Aerosystems strengthened the fighter jet's airframe and added a bomb bay for torpedoes and other weapons behind the wing. The aircraft is built at Boeing's Renton factory, featuring stronger wings from the 737 to 900 and raked wingtips similar to those on the Boeing 767 to 400 ER instead of the usual blended winglets. It also has advanced de-icing systems on its wingtips, horizontal stabilizers, and vertical stabilizers. In the cockpit, modifications to the flight control and alert systems allow for increased maneuverability and more responsive controls. The P-8 is equipped with powerful 180 kV electric generators on each engine, double the capacity of civilian 737s, necessitating redesigned nacelles and wing mountings. The Navy has praised the P-8's smoother flight experience compared to its predecessor, the P-3, which reduces crew fatigue and improves mission focus. Inside, the aircraft houses 5 operator stations along the port side of the cabin and a short bomb bay for torpedoes. It's designed to launch Mark 54 torpedoes from high altitudes using the high-altitude anti-submarine warfare weapon capability. It features the Raytheon APY-10 multi-mission surface search radar, and unlike most versions, lacks a magnetic anomaly detector, although the P-8Y variant for India includes one. It combines sensor data using advanced software to track targets. The aircraft is also set to receive the Advanced Airborne Sensor Radar during the P-8A Increment 2 upgrade. In U.S. service, the P-8A works alongside the MQ-4C Triton UAV for continuous surveillance. The aircraft is unique in that it uses a flying boom for in-flight refueling, similar to the USN's E-6 Mercury, and relies on USAF tankers like the KC-135, KC-10, and KC-46 for this purpose. It also has 6 auxiliary fuel tanks for extended missions. Since the United States have sent this beast, it simply means that they do not totally believe that Russia is simply performing its annual exercise. This might have something to do with Russia's recent declarations concerning the United States. After months of escalating tensions over Ukraine, U.S.-Russia relations have plummeted to new depths, with the Kremlin officially labeling the U.S. an enemy. Dmitry Peskov, press secretary to Russian President Vladimir Putin, made the stark declaration during a Tuesday press briefing, stating they are now an enemy country for them, just as they were for then. Previously, the Kremlin had referred to the U.S. and its Western allies as unfriendly states or opponents, particularly in response to their support of Ukraine and the provision of American-supplied weapons used against Russian forces. However, according to Agentstvo, an independent Russian investigative site, this is the first time the term enemy has been used in an official capacity. Experts speaking to TRT World downplayed the extent of the statement, noting that there's actually nothing new here because, whether publicly stated or not, the United States has long been considered by Russia as its enemy. This verbal escalation lays emphasis on the deepening tension between Moscow and Washington, increasing global tensions as the two nuclear powers engage in an increasingly fraught geopolitical standoff. The stark language also reflects the intensifying propaganda efforts on both sides, with Russia using the term enemy to rally domestic support amidst the ongoing and controversial war in Ukraine. As these superpowers square off, the implications for global security are profound, with the Caribbean Sea becoming the latest flashpoint. Russia's naval maneuvers, including the presence of the Kazan submarine and the frigate Admiral Gorshkov, armed with advanced missiles, are now seen through this heightened adversarial lens, prompting the U.S. to bolster its surveillance and preparedness in the region. The stage is set for a summer of high-stakes military posturing, echoing the Cold War era's most tense moments. Matthew Bryza, a former U.S. diplomat and ambassador to Azerbaijan, downplayed Russia calling the U.S. an enemy, saying that he is not worried because Russia's national security plans in 2014 and 2022 already named the U.S. as their main foe. Bryza explained that Russia's goal is to create divisions within NATO, making its members doubt the U.S. and each other. By painting the U.S. as reckless, Russia hopes to scare European NATO members. Ali Fuat Gökçe from Gaziantep University added that the U.S.'s attempts to influence Russia, often through NATO, are seen as threats by Moscow. NATO, though meant for defense, has become a tool for the United States' expansion, threatening non-NATO countries like Russia and China. Gökçe also believes that direct war between the U.S. and Russia is quite unlikely. The conflicts between the U.S. and Russia are usually fought through other countries or groups. The U.S. uses proxy forces, and Russia supports groups fighting against U.S. influence. This trend is expected to continue. According to Gökçe, as long as the U.S. tries to weaken Russia and China, conflicts will likely drag on and be fought indirectly. With rising tensions and strategic moves in the Caribbean, the situation recalls Cold War brinkmanship. Direct conflict is unlikely to occur, but proxy wars and strategic alliances will shape the U.S.-Russia relations in the near future. Peskov's enemy comments came after former American intelligence officer Scott Ritter claimed he was stopped from entering St. Petersburg and had his passport taken by border officials. Peskov told reporters that stopping Americans from engaging with Russia would only make sense if Ritter's past intelligence work was involved. Otherwise, it would look like another attempt to isolate Russia. Scott Ritter, a former U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer convicted of sexual offenses, told TASS he was removed from a New York-Istanbul flight on his way to the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum in Russia. Ritter, who often voices the Kremlin's views on the war in Ukraine, has been frequently quoted in Russian state media. Despite this incident, the Kremlin's tone has grown harsher. Peskov labeled the United States as an enemy state after President Biden allowed Ukraine to use U.S.-supplied weapons to target Russian territory. This marks a significant escalation in the already tense relations between the two nations. It is important to note that the relationship between the United States and Russia has not always been bad. After the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, U.S.-Russia relations were warm during Boris Yeltsin's presidency. Initially, the two countries worked together on global issues like arms control, counterterrorism, and the conflict in Bosnia. However, relations soured during Yeltsin's second term, especially over NATO's 1999 intervention in Kosovo, which Yeltsin saw as infringing on Russia's sphere of influence. He also criticized NATO's expansion into Eastern Europe as a threat to Russian security. When Vladimir Putin became president in 2000, he initially sought better relations with the U.S. Both countries cooperated on counterterrorism and arms control, and Putin worked closely with President George W. Bush after the 9/11 attacks, especially in Afghanistan. But as Putin became more authoritarian, tensions rose. The U.S. then supported Georgia's pro-Western government, leading to the Russo-Georgian War. Further tension brewed from the United States missile defense system, and relations significantly deteriorated after Putin regained power in 2012, particularly due to Russia's annexation of Crimea and intervention in Ukraine. The situation worsened with Russia's involvement in the Syrian civil war and interference in the 2016 and 2020 U.S. elections. The Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022 brought U.S.-Russia relations to their lowest point since the Cuban Missile Crisis. In response, the United States and its allies imposed expanded sanctions on Russia, targeting state-owned banks and oligarchs, deepening the tension between the two nations. Their relationship is bound to get worse as long as the war between Ukraine and Russia continues. Back to the annual exercise that is set to happen in Cuba, Russia is not the only country participating in these types of annual exercises. The United States is too. Last year, the Philippines and the U.S. started their largest Bali Cotton military exercise, which involves Filipino and American troops. But this year's exercise is quite different. The largest and most prominent annual joint and combined exercise of the United States-Africa Command, African Lion 2024, began recently in Tunisia as announced by the Pentagon during a briefing. The U.S. Army's Southern European Task Force, Africa, is conducting the exercise in Tunisia, Senegal, Ghana, and Morocco, with over 8,000 personnel from more than 27 nations participating until May 31. According to Deputy Pentagon Press Secretary Sabrina Singh. According to Singh, African Lion offers a chance for realistic, dynamic, and collaborative readiness training in challenging environments. He also noted that it enhances interoperability and strengthens shared defense capabilities to counter violent extremist organizations and transnational threats. Now in its 20th year, African Lion reflects the United States military's commitment to maintaining strong relationships with regional allies and partners, embodying a partner-led and U.S.-supported approach to Africa, as stated in a recent Army release. In Tunisia, African Lion will focus on improving readiness and interoperability through various training activities, including live-fire exercises, explosive ordnance disposal operations, and chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear training. Among the more than 8,000 participants, the United States military will be represented by members from 3 of its 6 armed forces. The Army, Air Force, and Marines are all involved. Additionally, Singh announced that the U.S. Naval Forces Africa and U.S. Marine Corps Africa are partnering with Ghana's Navy to lead the African Maritime Forces Summit and Navy Infantry Leadership Symposium Africa in Accra, Ghana. The summit that ran through Thursday and was themed Cooperation at Sea, Safeguarding African Maritime Security, involved military chiefs and government leaders from over 40 international ally and partner countries discussing maritime security and collaboration. Thanks for watching. While you are still here, click on the link on your screen to check out another of our videos. See you there.